DNS, or Domain Name System. A large majority of the people in the world use the internet for different reasons, whether it's business use, emailing, researching, internet shopping, watching movies, or downloading music. The DNS is a service on the internet which translates domain names into IP addresses, Internet Protocol addresses. For example, the domain name www.myexample.com could possibly translate to 93.97.61.47. Although domain names are very easy to remember, the internet uses IP addresses instead. How do you describe the size of the DNS? It's difficult to imagine the size. The only way to think about it is to think about the sheer number of websites that are on the internet and how many people are requesting different web pages at any one time. The reason being is that for the user to access a web page, the DNS must translate the domain name into an IP address so that the user is directed to the correct web page. This means that the DNS has to translate hundreds of different web pages into domains, into IP addresses constantly. There are three main components of the DNS. The first is the domain name space. This is a database of related information. Domain names can be both uppercase and lowercase and are defined by RFC 1034 to not be case sensitive. This means that www.myexample.com is exactly the same in uppercase and lowercase. There are two levels of domain, the top level domain and second level domain. The top level domain is the end part of the URL, the .com, .co.uk, .gov.uk, anything. The second level domain is, for example, my example. This is the part where the company chooses. The second most important component of the DNS is the name server. Every zone has a main name server which is the source of the resource records. This server can be updated by an administrator. There is a secondary backup of the server which has copies of the main server's data. DNS name servers also have the ability to perform zone transfers. This is where the name server searches the database for the entered web address to find the IP address for that web page. If for some mysterious reason the domain name is not in the main server, the DNS name server transfers the web page it's looking for to the second server, and so on and so forth to different zones until the correct IP address is found. The third and final main component of the DNS is the DNS resolver. This is the access of the domain name database for the resolver, which could either be a program or part of a computer operating system. The resolver will send a request of the name server and return the information requested by the user. So how do these three components relate to each other? These three components relate to each other because they all use each other for the DNS service to be active. The user who wants to access the web page enters the domain name into the domain name space or URL. The domain name space is used by the other two components to access the domain names. If the local DNS name server can't find the domain name, then the DNS resolver comes into place and locates the domain name and sends the IP address back to the local zone server. Overall, all three main components use each other in order to fulfill the user's request. What is the function of the DNS? The internet, as we know it today, plays a major role in some people's lives. For example, some businesses can't function without the internet. As I stated before, the DNS is the backbone of the internet. Without it, there wouldn't be one. The function of the DNS is to translate domain names into IP addresses, because the internet only understands IP addresses, not domain names. When a user attempts to access another computer on the network, a structure must be in place to map the domain names to their equivalent addresses. Is the operation of the domain name system affected by any legislation in the UK? The answer to this is yes. Domain names have to be different from one another, meaning no two domain names can be the same. However, domain names can be different even in the slightest, such as one domain name could be www.myexample.com and the other could be www.myexamp1e.com. Charlotte Wald, no two domain names can be identical. There can be only one, Harrods.com. The word Harrods could either be registered under one of the country domains. Thus, along with Harrods.com, Harrods.co.uk can also be used as a domain name. In addition, variations to the name Harrods.com can be registered, for example, HARR0DS or HARR0DS1. The permissions are limited by only one imagination. What is the most significant limitation to the continued operation of the DNS? As there are too many domain names and not enough IP addresses to assign to future domain names, Internet Protocol version 6, IPv6, was created. It is another Internet Protocol version that was released after the Internet Protocol version 4, IPv4, ran out of addresses. Every host requires an IP address in order to communicate with one another. The vast growth of internet has demanded more IP addresses than it was physically possible for IPv4 to handle. In conclusion, as I said earlier, the DNS plays a huge role in the internet and in most of our lives. Without it, there wouldn't be a World Wide Web, which means you wouldn't be watching this presentation today. Thank you.